Hello and welcome to the Coaching Chapters podcast. Today feels like a full circle moment for me because I'm joined by someone who isn't just a colleague or a friend. She's part of my professional coaching journey, my growth, and so many meaningful conversations we've had over the years. Miriam and I have worked together in the corporate world, shared challenges, solved problems, laughed, a lot of laughing, and reflected deeply on the kind of leaders and humans we want to train and be ourselves. And that's exactly the energy we're bringing into today's episode. Not just a guest, but a real conversation between two of us who've lived this work from the inside. And for those who might not know Miriam, she brings over 20 years of coaching experience across leaders, teams, and whole organizations. She has coached boards through systemic team coaching, guided C-suite leaders through executive coaching, and supported senior leadership teams navigate some of the biggest moments. She is a psychologist, a coach, and Miriam's approach is grounded in presence, clarity, and genuine lived experiences. She coaches with a systemic lens that creates space for meaning, sustainable transformation at both individual and team levels. So today it's the two of us reflecting, challenging, laughing, expanding as we explore the difference between scarcity and abundance mindsets and why it's important even more than before for leaders, teams, and coaches around the world today. Hi Miriam, welcome to the Coaching Chapters podcast. It's fantastic to be here with you today, and I'm so excited that we're going to be exploring something that we have both experienced professionally and personally. Really, what is mindset and what is the difference between a scarcity and an abundance mindset? With so much going on in today's world of work and leadership, teams and coaching, I know that between us and our corporate experiences and now as coaches in our own fields of work, we'll be able to really share a whole bunch of stories, golden nuggets and practical takeaways. So Miriam, what does mindset mean to you?
What an absolutely brilliant question, Benish. It means to me a setting of the mind. So it's a way of framing our experiences, our beliefs, and our expectations. So Anais Nin has this beautiful quote, which you might be familiar with, which is, "We don't see the world as it is, we see the world as we are." So our mindset determines what we see and how we see it. So with an abundance mindset, we see abundance. We see there's enough business for all of us. I have everything I need. Everything I need is in the system. With a scarcity mindset, I see I have to fight for my piece of the pie. Other people have more than I have, and that's not fair. Or I'm never enough. Or what I have is small, and that's all I can expect to have. And it's interesting as well, because it's not just about success. It's about it's even about our health. It's about our friendships, our relationships, our happiness, so many things. And in our work as coaches, am I enough, or do I have to prove I'm the best one? Do I think, well, I'll just sit here and be small because that's all I am? And it's all mindset. And the thing is, being it, your mindset is a choice. And that's the thing people often don't realize. You think it's a fixed thing. Like Carol Dweck teaches us a lot about a growth mindset versus a fixed mindset. Very similar here with scarcity versus abundance. There is an amazing, fantastic, he's a philanthropist and an innovator, and his name is Naveen Jain. And he is an extraordinary man. And he says, you need to dream so big that when you tell people your dreams, they think you're crazy. And if they don't think you're crazy, your dreams aren't big enough. And one of his he's famous for software innovation, I think mostly. But one of his questions about abundance, or his concerns, is that we should have an abundant mindset because we live in an abundant world. And take the concept of water, for example. We're in a huge climate change water shortage. People don't have enough water to drink in certain parts of the world. And yet, he argues that we have oceans. We have so much water in our planet. We just need to figure out how to use it. But our mindset is scarcity. And with an abundance mindset, you would be looking to solve the problem in a different way, like desalination, for example, and finding ways, different ways, new ways to approach the problems that we have with an abundant mindset. There is enough water on this planet. Of course, there is. So it's just an interesting idea. But I love his quote about being crazy. And I love to think of myself as a crazy person.
I love that. I love the be more crazy. I've definitely learned around being a bit more crazy from you, Miriam. When we talk about mindset, for me, it's definitely a combination of what I originally thought was that realignment of perspective, of looking at things a little bit differently. What else could it be? What else could be going on? Asking those wider, deeper questions for myself to change my perspective, to change my mindset. But over time, I realized it's not just about realignment for me. It's actually a bit what you were saying about that creative thinking around how creatively can I think beyond what I first see or what I first hear or feel about this particular situation or in certain aspects this particular person. What is it that I need to be more curious about to creatively think what could be blocking my mindset and my perspective? And I completely agree with you. True abundance is not something you are born with, but it's a mindset you can adopt. You once said to me, Miriam, I don't know if you remember this, just say yes. It was when I was starting up my own business. You said, just say yes. And through that, to you, it was maybe just a comment. To me, it was that shift of looking away from a world of what if failures, what if things go wrong, to a world of what if things go really well? What if doors do open and opportunities do come about? Your what if, or just say yes approach for me led doing things very, very differently to what I originally had carved out for myself.
Well, I'm really pleased to hear that actually. But you already have that mindset. Maybe you just needed a little reminder to switch it on. And I think that's often the case for many of us. And I think that idea of how we see the world is really important. And just saying yes and having the expectation and the belief that whatever you need is going to be there. Because if you don't believe that, you won't be able to see it. And there is um, I think you mentioned acting as if, which is a little game that I play sometimes with myself or with people I'm coaching. And I remember years ago I was working in an unfamiliar environment, and I was in my middle 30s, I think, and I'd come out of pharma and I was working in this kind of risk. And I don't really know how I ended up there. They thought I was this fabulous person, and they kind of brought me in, and I realized I wasn't really able to do this job, and it was really hard. But they think they thought because I'd come from this big company that I was this amazing person, and it was a really strange period of my life. But I remember thinking, I've got two choices here. I can either leave or I can find a way to lean into this as an opportunity. I can see it as something. So, do you know what I did, Benish? I pretended. I was sharing this with a client the other day. I pretended. Okay, I'm going to pretend I'm on this very expensive MBA course, and the MBA course gives me a challenge every day that I have to solve. And I had a belief that whatever I need, I'll be able to solve it. I have what I need within me to solve these things. And if I don't have it in me, it's somewhere in the system outside of me. Someone's going to be able to help me. And and then when things were really challenging, so at board meetings and things, I imagined I was being filmed as part of the MBA class. And they're like, this is how to do it, you know. So I would turn up with these really difficult situations. And I remember, and I'd say to myself, okay, how am I going to handle this? How am I? And it was an abundant mindset. It was the belief that whatever I need, um, and the little game helped me. But whatever I need, if someone asks me a question, I'm going to be able to say either I know the answer or I don't. But I can find a way to make it relevant or take the question away and bring it back to what we're trying to achieve in the session. And it really helped me. And it gave me so much confidence when I didn't have any and I was in an unfamiliar environment. So but I was giving that advice to in a session with someone who was feeling a bit hopeless. And I told her that story, and she said, right, she said, I'm going to do that all next week. I'm on my MBA program. I'm going to choose the moments I'm going to be filmed, because then your mind prepares you, and it does it not just psychologically, but biologically, philosophically, spiritually. All those things come together because of the meaning you are choosing to make about any given situation in any moment.
I love that, because you're activating both the crazy and the creative all in one go, to find a tool that really, really worked for you. I remember when I was younger, one thing I was always described as was a daydreamer. I would always be daydreaming, and my dad always said to me, always continue your daydreaming, but dream big. Make sure you dream big. So actually, that's something that's really stuck with me. And even now, I sometimes find the most successful people, not only do they dream big, they actually romanticize the smallest things, the smaller joys in life, whether it be the coffee or whether it be where they work or picking up a book. And it looks different to different people I speak to, but something around that daydreaming, thinking big, and romanticizing life are all sort of traits which can really help showcase what an abundance mindset can look and feel like.
Benish, that's magic. What you've just said is magic. And often it's those little small moments. So you're dreaming big, and I love that notion so much. And I love what your father told you, because we should all tell our children those things. We should all tell our clients those things. And there's a lot of science behind this as well, which I think you're familiar with. Richard Boyatzis, he's big, the ideal self, and who you really want to become, and the many possible versions of those that there are. But to not limit yourself, to really think big, but then to hold those magic moments of pure joy in the little things, because that's gold dust, actually. And an example could be, supposing you want more love in your life, which a lot of people do in our crazy, strange world that we live in, and an abundance of love. You might kind of try and find it, but actually, if you look for it, it's there. It's always there. And it might not be that have 27 million friends. It might be that you have the love of your family and friends, the love of your children, that your love of nature, your love of a twinkling stars at night, your you, so accessing the love that you already have is what abundance really means. It's looking for what is already there, because then it becomes magnified. And if you can connect it to your dreams, then you have what you're talking about, Benish. That's the magic moment. I love that.
And I just totally love that, what you just said, because actually, we speak about it a lot around giving without expecting anything in return. And that's not something that's just done in our private lives, but professionally as well. The more you tend to give, the more you attract, the more you get back without it needing to be transactional. And so then when it does become transactional, when it does become business later on, it comes from a very sincere place. And it really helps wider professionally within your ways of working, networking, those building those relationships outside of the normative spaces that you might be in. So, Miriam, thinking about an abundance mindset, scarcity mindset, for people who are maybe listening to this and might find it so far fetched for them, so abstract for them to comprehend, what, in your view, is a more simpler way of thinking about an abundance mindset?
For me, it's an intersection of psychology, philosophy, and spirituality. So it's quite a deep concept, actually. I would say be generous, like you said, to kind of. So when you're networking, when you are in a meeting, when you're working as a leader, I always say lead with love. See beyond the transactions, because that accesses an abundance mindset of belief in other people, being kind to other people, be curious about other people. And I guess the scarcity often is where we sort of compare ourselves to others. So we start going, oh, are they better than me? Are they criticizing me? Don't they like me? Which is very much a scarcity mindset, or a sort of below the line, if you're familiar with that concept mindset, which is really common when people are tired and you're overworked and we're brittle in our brains and we're not able to be agile and flexible and aware. So when people, I believe, practice things like mindfulness and ways to just calm down the mind, then you give it a chance to be able to see beyond, to see that kind of defensive behavior and move past that, and actually just really believe in yourself and other people, and think about what can I give to the world? How can I love? How do I want to show up? How do I want people to feel around me, rather than worried about how you're comparing to other people? So, so I think that's one way of doing it. So, going to networking, I often speak with people who are very anxious about networking, and it's not just coaches; it's anyone who is in, lawyers who are building a practice, or accountants, terrified at going to these things, and you're like having to talk about yourself and your business, and actually, if you go with a whole different mindset of, well, what can I give? What can I find out about other people? How can I make other people feel at ease? How can I help other people shine? That's an abundance mindset. And it's actually really easy to do. It's much easier to go into a room doing that than to be worried and fraught and anxious about how you're going to show up and what you're going to say and what people are going to think about you.
Yeah, I love that so much, Miriam. I know when we used to run our pathway programs together, one of the key golden nuggets I would give to the cohort at the end would say, just be open with your thinking, be open with your words. Things that you feel and think that could be positive towards someone, just say it. You never know how that could change. And that's really demonstrating that abundance mindset through your relationships. And thinking about sort of that inner peace, having that inner peace within to be able to do that. It's a form of being self assured to some degree that actually, when you are having a bad day, you're being a bit more aware of the language you're telling yourself, the language you use, because language does matter. It all stems down to our insecurities, our self esteem, how we show up with ourselves, with others. And I love the fact that you called out on a bad day, what does abundance mindset look on a bad day? Well, it looks like having that awareness as to what is the noise that's playing in your mind, and really demystifying that blocker to think, is it really as big of a mountain as you're making at the moment? Or is it something that needs that time to be looked at from a different perspective, from that creative, broader view of what is really going on and why it matters?
And I think there's a gentleness there that we need to have with ourselves, a self-compassion, because some days are bad days. Some days you screw up, you make a big mistake, it's awful. But that's not you. That's just your behavior at that time, in that time and moment in space and time. And it's learning to be able to say, okay, I did that. What did I learn? And remembering to have that compassion and that kindness and that care, to kind of nurture your soul back again to the abundance mindset. And we all need ways to come home to that. And that's, I believe, something that's missing so much in the workplace. That uh, our permission to be human beings and to screw up every now and then, and not to have the world end. It's just a bad day. It's just, I said the wrong thing. I upset somebody. Okay, I can make it better. I can learn from it. I can apologize if necessary, but I can move on. And that's so, so important. And I don't think we give ourselves that that compassion as much as we should do. And I think it's because we're fraught. I think we're all jangled a lot of the time, and we don't give ourselves that space to kind of just replenish, connect with what's important, um, and be human beings.
And that's such a wonderful reminder. I remember when I was applying for jobs post university, I'd finished my master's. I took a TFL map because in those days you'd get handout maps available. And I stuck it on my pinboard and I highlighted Canary Wharf, saying that one day I'm going to work in Canary Wharf. And looking back at it now, I can say, yes, I had a successful 12-year career working at Canary Wharf. But absolutely, on those bad days, there was the need for me to exercise that gratitude where I would walk outside, it would be sunset, it'd be raining, but there was something so magical in being in Canary Wharf with all the lights twinkling and it's raining to kind of remind myself that actually, I've had a bad day, but this is something I dreamed of at one point. This is something I prayed for. This is something I strived towards. This was on my pinboard. And I still kept that TFL map with Canary Wharf highlighted. Because at one point, at one stage of my life, it felt so unattainable. It was during the recession a long, long time ago, and it just didn't feel ever possible. So, there is something around having that gratitude, reminding ourselves why we are in certain places. What did we once dream of? What did we once pray of? Where are we on our journey? And reflecting back.
That's so important. And that's real gratitude. Um, and gratitude's been researched a lot, and often it's a bit misunderstood. But the way you describe that, um, connecting to your dreams, connecting to what's important, this is what you dreamt for, this is what you prayed for, and you're here, and keeping it is so meaningful for you. And sometimes, because of the way we have, particularly since the pandemic, because of the way that we often work and therefore live our lives, we don't give ourselves spaces to have those moments. And because we don't, we sort of get a bit disconnected from who we are psychologically, and we get disconnected from our dreams and what's important for us. So we become this kind of other version, just going through the motions. And that's what, and often become very unhappy as a result of that. Um, and so practicing true gratitude in a very meaningful way is actually very deep and very powerful. And there's studies globally that have shown how important that is. But it doesn't mean being flippant. Some people are very, if you don't really understand this stuff, and it is, as we said, it's deeper than it looks. It's not just be positive, be grateful. There's a little bit more to it than that. Be grateful for the things that matter. Be grateful for the things you have in your life. And I was reminded of a book we were talking about before, which I read many, many years ago, A Present from My Mother, called Simple Abundance by Sarah Brannock. And in that book, it's for women. I'm not even sure if it's in print anymore. I mean, this is a million years ago, but there's a chapter every day to read. And one of the chapters is about a writer, and I think it's called One Ordinary Day or something. And your Canary Wharf story reminded me of that. And she was perhaps imagining the end of her life, or I think she might have been at the end of her life. And she was thinking, rather than go back to my wedding day or the best day or the holidays, I want to go back to the ordinary days, like when it was raining and I was late to catch my children, and I found them and I hugged them and we laughed in the rain that day, or the day I had a puncture, and I don't know, the day that maybe things went wrong and or the days that I savored, those ordinary moments that we can savor. And I think we become very close to who we are when we savor in that way. And that's exactly what you described. You came out, the sunset, it's raining. Here I am in Canary Wharf. I'm connected to my dream. I'm in my dream, and it's raining and I'm tired and I had a bad day, but here. I am in my dream. That's so, so magical.
Yeah, I love that quote that you shared. It's one of my favorite ones because actually it's one I feel like you could stick on a post-it on your fridge and just be reminded of it every now and again. That actually there is so much beauty in the ordinary, and helping people activate and navigate that can be challenging for some. So in your view, what is sort of the balance between gratitude and reality, Miriam?
So I was thinking about this because I often do think about the, the sort of balance between various things like optimism and pessimism, or trust and mistrust, or those things that we find sometimes as humans hard to balance from, an emotional intelligence point of view. And gratitude is an interesting one because gratitude is one of the virtues which was originally brought to us by the Stoics, Aristotle and um, all of the Stoics. And it was seen as a virtue. To be able to have gratitude is a virtue. And there were many other virtues as well. But Aristotle always cautioned against something which he called the vice of the virtue, which meant that if you do too much of a virtue or too little of a virtue, it can become a vice. So what you have to do is the thing in the middle, which he called the golden mean. So there's a whole, you can learn about this in philosophy. It's really interesting though, because, if we're just grateful for everything, willy nilly, that's not gratitude. In fact, it might do us more harm than good. And if we're never grateful for anything at all, then we're mean spirited. We just can't see anything. Massive scarcity mindset. But if we are grateful for the things that matter, so we have a way of connecting it to what's important and valuable and meaningful for us, then that's a very different thing. And the same golden mean applies to all of the virtues. And I think that's one way of balancing them. And another way actually is what people describe as a triangle, which is, so let's take gratitude, for example, gratitude to others, gratitude to myself, and gratitude from others. So very often we have wonky triangles. We're very grateful to other people, but we're not grateful to ourselves. Or we might not take gratitude in from other people. So that's another way of balancing it to get to that golden mean. So, yeah.
That's so wonderful. And it is going back to that inner work for yourself so that you can do that for others, but actually also having that realization that it can often be easier for us to be, like you said, grateful to others, but not grateful to ourselves, or vice versa. And being mindful and aware that how people handle gratitude or reality looks very different. So just be adaptable and flexible with what that means, both professionally and in your private relationships. Just because it's easy for you does not make it easy for somebody else. Just because it's hard for you, you can't expect the other person to fully understand the extent that you're going through. And it's through that open dialogue, open communication, curiosity, we can better understand ourselves and the other people around us as well.
So I'm synthesizing here, listening to you. There's something about awareness, openness to what we're learning and seeing from ourselves and others, and then that kind of closing that loop with some synthesis, if you like, of how do I understand this better? What do I need to do to move it forward? So that's, hey, we could copyright that, Benish, that awareness, kind of openness and synthesis.
Formulas we'd come up with to make it more tangible for people that need it in that format. And look, if we were to add another ingredient onto the top of abundance mindset, I would not want to leave without discussing resilience. I think so much of having an abundance mindset is being resilient, so deeply comfortable with getting things wrong, trying it again, getting back up, giving it a go, changing your thought process, changing it again, admitting when things don't go right, and trying something new. I think resilience is so needed in today's world. There's so much change, there's so much innovation going on. That need for resilience is so deeply needed.
And I think the abundance mindset is very closely related to resilience as well, because it's when we most need to be resilient is sometimes when we're most stressed. And we have strange mindsets around stress. Most people have a scarcity mindset around stress, that is bad for us. And it is, but it depends. It depends on how you think about stress. This is what research is teaching us. So if you believe stress is actually important for me right now and it's getting my body prepared to be resilient and to be able to do this or to be creative or to solve problems or to be stronger in some way. So I'm full of, I don't know, joy, maybe excitement. People who experience stress in times where they need to be resilient, if they're thinking about it like that, have very different outcomes and medical longevity outcomes, as well as just in the moment outcomes from people who are frightened by it. So it's that using your abundance mindset and your awareness to lean into the openness we just talked about. Where do I need to be vulnerable? If we can't succeed without resilience, and you cannot be resilient without being vulnerable, and you can't be vulnerable without being open to what is causing you stress or anxiety or what's missing. So it's kind of trying to connect all of those things. So if you believe, so this is an expectation mindset as well, because if you believe, and there's so much science behind this, if you believe that the stress you're experiencing in some way is going to help you, and you believe that vulnerability is important, and you believe that you are going to succeed and you have what you need in the system and you can ask for it if you don't have it, you are going to succeed. Um, it's a kind of placebo effect, which has been, you look at operations, pain, um, all kinds of things. A lot of medical science around placebo is fascinating, and it's not necessarily the thing that's happening to you. It's how you think about it. So, do you see yourself as a resilient person, or do you see yourself as some kind of a victim? You know, because that affects your mindset and that affects your outcome.
Yeah. With resilience, a lot of people feel it's something that they have to deal with by themselves. It's something solo. And so much of being resilient actually taps into having a community, having a network, having those collaborative relationships to help you support you through whatever you're going through. So there's something that we would definitely like to bring to the conversation around making sure that you're merging your need for resilience with the need for collaborating, removing that need to be competing all the time, but really tapping into your community. Actually, who is it that I can learn from? Who is it that I can turn to when I'm having this anxiety, stress around this particular piece? Who can really support me in my journey? And how can I support others in that way as well? So, an abundance mindset really helps foster that collaboration over competitiveness.
And I'm reminded of Kelly McGonigal's work there. When we're really stressed and when we reach out and connect to other people, then yes, we make cortisol, which is harmful, but we also make oxytocin which counteracts the harmful effects of cortisol, which is why how you think about stress is. But it's mediated by what you've just said. It's that reaching out and asking for help. And so many people, and I'm one of them, I don't realize that I don't ask for help. Like, it's all very well to say, I mean, everyone knows you should ask for help. I mean, it's a bit like you should get up in the morning, but actually a lot of people aren't aware that they don't do that, because one of the problems um, with stress is your awareness goes down. So you kind of don't really know how you're thinking. So I love what you're saying there about look at your thinking. Like, what am I saying? And then look at it objectively, and then you can make sense of it. And yes, the strategy of, am I connecting with somebody? Yes or no? The openness there is really important. I'm not. Who can I connect with? Who do I know? What other resources can I tap into that I haven't already done so? Beautiful. I think that's beautiful.
One of my old work colleagues, he used to tell me that he did this with his daughters. He would always ask his daughters, and they're in college now, which is university equivalent for the UK. And he would ask them, do you need to be helped, hugged, or heard in this moment? I love that tool so much because whilst it's something he used on his children, I think it's something we can use on ourselves. Because often, sometimes it's not even one of the three, it could be all three combined. Actually, I need help, I need to be helped, I need to be heard, and I need a good hug right now as well. And sometimes, different tools will stick for different people, but actually coming back to that inner awareness of ourselves, it's what is going on? What is that misalignment? What needs to be realigned right now? And actually, if it falls in one of those buckets, particularly the helped bucket, well, actually, as a grown, resilient adult, who do you feel comfortable going to get that help instead of trying to deal with it all by yourself?
So important. So important. I love that too. I'm going to borrow that.
It's not mine. I wish it was mine, but it's not. So Miriam, what would be one of your golden nuggets you'd like to leave some of our audience today around that abundance mindset?
I would say, so one of my favorite lines of my favorite poem by W.B. Yeats is tread softly for you tread upon my dreams. I think, dream big, as we said at the beginning, but connect to your dream, connect to um, the kind of person you really want to become, what's really important for you. How do you want to be seen in the world? What is it you want to create? And make that dream so big that people think you're crazy. Because then it will resonate with you. It's important for you. And I would say once you have something, there's a whole load of things you can do with that. But in a really difficult, dark day, your dream is what will kind of keep you going. And also your dream, the big thing, will help you see the small little trails of breadcrumbs that you lets you know that you're on track. So I think our dreams are so important for us. Um, and I don't think we do it. I don't think we use our imagination enough as human beings. And it's such a beautiful resource. So I would say that's one nugget.
I love that. It reminds me of when we used to run our Ikigai workshops together. And by the end of the session, you'd have all these beautiful pictures that people have scribbled and painted on with their affirmations. I'm strong, I'm kind, I'm confident, I can do this. And there is something around affirmations for ourselves within dreaming big. And what I would really encourage people to really think, what is their one tagline, their one metaphor, their one quote they can write for themselves that could help them in their particular season of life now?
And you know what's lovely about that? When you have that concept and that quote or that motto or whatever it is, in a difficult, it's easy when times are good because we're in a good mood and we're able to see more and feel more abundant and connect with those things. But they're most helpful for us when things are tough, on a really tough day. And you think, what would Miriam in my ideal self do in this situation? And of course, you have the answer straight away. And so you're tapping into your innate wisdom with your big dreams. They're not just dreams, they're part of who you are, they're part of your identity. So I absolutely love what you said.
And there is that piece around role model. Really think back to who are our role models and what would they do? I know, particularly in the work environment, there's a couple of leaders I'd worked with that I admire even now, 10, 12, 15 years on into my career. And I often, on a bad day, think, what would they do? I don't speak to them as frequently as I did at one stage, but it's a great reminder to think who are those inspirational leaders or people in our lives. And actually, yeah, what would they do? How would they tackle this? It may not be true. It may not be what they actually do, but in our view, in our vision, in our dream of who they are, this is what they would do. And that's the inspiration we all need to look for on those bad days.
I love that. And that is so, so, so helpful as a tool. It is, but it's beautiful as well. And it connects us to who we really are.
Thank you so much, Miriam. So, if we were to recap, having that abundance mindset is thinking about what is it that you're focusing on, because what you're going to reflect is what you're going to attract. And it's not something you're born with, it's something you can change. It requires that inner reflections, inner work. and constant evaluation as to what blockers am I putting in front of myself.
Absolutely magnificent.
Thank you so much, Miriam, for joining today's podcast. I hope you have enjoyed the conversation as much as I have.
I have loved it. I felt in that podcast, you and I were back in our pathways, DJing, as we used to call it. I feel very joyful. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Coaching Chapters podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please follow the podcast and leave a quick rating and share it with someone who would love this conversation. Until next time, keep learning, keep reflecting, and keep growing.